Assalamualaikum and good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to day 2 of the Digital Disruptors Week at the Malaysia Tech Month 2021. We're coming to you live virtually. Malaysia, the heart of digital ASEAN. My name is Hasro and I'll be your host for today. It's my absolute pleasure to welcome all of you this fine Tuesday morning, 24th of August 2021. I'd like to thank all attendees for taking time off to join us on this virtual platform for us to connect, even in these unpredictable times. For those who just tuned in, let's bring you up to speed what's been happening. So, the Malaysia Tech Month 2021, also known as MTM 2021, is launched by the Malaysia Digital Economy Corporation, MDEC, throughout the month of August as a virtual month-long curation of electrifying the digital and technology keynotes, workshops, discussion panels, and business matching sessions. It will feature distinguished groups of local and international industry speakers and investors to share their expert thoughts and experiences in the 4IR digital economy. MTM 2021 will see exciting programs that will allow the spotlight to be shown upon digital ecosystem leaders and creators, leading-edge companies, as well as talents, enabling all stakeholders to discover new perspectives on domestic and global trends in artificial intelligence, drone tech, data analytics, fintech, Islamic fintech, e-commerce, agtech, creative games and animation, and not forgetting the digital workforce. So before we move on, allow me to convey some housekeeping guidelines. Number 1, any questions for our speakers, you may submit them via the Q&A comment box. Number 2, meeting and chat rooms are available for the attendees for the networking convenience. Number 3, please complete the survey for each of the sessions for us to continuously serve you better. And lastly, number 4, should you require any technical assistance, please chat with our admin on the virtual platform. Thank you. Therefore, without further ado, join me in welcoming the first panel discussion of the day entitled Tourism, Future Trends in the Muslim Lifestyle Market. Moderating this session is Rushdi Siddiqui, co-founder, iPortal Live, and founder of World Waqf Day. Rushdi has been involved with leading teams in investing in Islamic social finance, halal food industry, sustainability, as well as startups. He is also one of the top 50 leaders of the Islamic economy by Islamika 500, mentoring for McKinsey Youth Leadership Academy, Malaysia. Therefore, with that, I pass over to you, Rushdi.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum. Bismillah. It's a pleasure and honor to be here to start off the festivities. We'd like to thank MDEC for making this thing happen. Very much appreciated and wish MDEC the very best with respect to its role in terms of this event and what the outcomes of this event are in terms of execution. So today we're going to talk about tourism, the future trends in the Muslim lifestyle marketplace. Numbers, it's about 189 billion in 2018 and 270 billion or so in 2024. Those are big numbers. Hopefully we can put that in context. I've got two of the leading voices in this particular space. So I'm going to learn, and we are all going to learn about tourism in the new normal. And understand this, that tourism does not operate alone in a vacuum, and it impacts and is impacted, and COVID is a great example. So what we're going to be able to do here is break out some of the elements here. We're not going to be able to provide a pathway forward, but what we will do is basically say, here are some of the milestones. These are some of the guidelines we should be looking at. Both of these speakers, I know Brother Faeez, he is the CEO and co-founder of Trip Pheasant Salam Standard, and Brother Fazal, who is the founder and CEO of CrescentRatings and HalalTrip. What we want to do is have an engaging conversation, and to have an engaging conversation, let me start by basically setting the table. What I've done is basically put together a few slides, and the slides become basis for part of the conversations with our colleagues. After I finish this, then what we'll do is turn it over to them. They'll speak, and then the other gentleman will speak, Brother Fazal first, then Brother Faeez second. And then what we hope to have is an engaging conversation in a civilized tone. And we expect the audience to actually ask us, because you may not get often a time to have these two gentlemen on the same platform, so ask them tough questions. So let's start. What I want to cover, the Muslim trends and the Muslim lifestyle. If you can click, please. So the three sets of sectors, or three sets of verticals I want to have our esteemed speakers address. Pent-up demand, the quarantine. When will we start going back to the new normal? We want to also talk about the travel readiness indicator. We'll explain about that. And will it have an impact on the ranking of the Muslim-friendly destinations? What is at stake here? It's billions of dollars, but it's much more than that. What's going to happen to those laid off workers in the hospitality industry? And consolidation, the hotels, whether they're the budget hotels, mid-range or high-range, is consolidation one of the things that will take place as a potential future trend. Next, please. If you can click, yeah. So an important part of future trends is the travel and tourism industry contributes to 8% of the greenhouse gases, right? So future travel has to be responsible travel. We are moving away from mass travel, and we need to focus on sustainable Islamic, sustainable Muslim lifestyle travel. And what is the role of startups in that space? And I'll explain. If you can click, please. So the last vertical I want us to talk about is, are we going to go back to the same in the new normal? Because it's about behavior modification. What is going to be required and what must be done by the hospitality industry to showcase responsible Muslim travelers? So these are the three areas that I'll just go a little bit deeper in, and then we'll turn it over to my colleagues. Next slide, please. So this is the travel readiness indicator by CrescentRatings. I found this to be one of the most useful tools. If you can click again, please. One more time. And one more time. And it focuses on prevention, detection, and control. This is basically the mapping of showcasing what a country is doing, and if that country happens to be one of the top OIC or non-OIC in the Muslim travel marketplace, as told by the JIMTI, then we have to understand how it's going to impact the travel ranking with interventions of this. Next, please. So here, if you can click one more time, please. One more time. So this is the travel readiness indicator, JIMTI 2021. We see what's happening in Malaysia, and Malaysia is doing all it can do more. Will its ranking in 2022 be impacted because of this travel readiness indicator? Next, please. Keep going, please. Next. Next. Okay, so here, this is the top 20 inbound markets. COVID has impacted everything and everyone, whether you're developing or emerging or frontier markets. That travel readiness indicator is going to have a big impact with respect to this. This also includes within country tourism. Malaysia has a number of states. Indonesia has a number of states. Some states are doing better than others. How is that going to work out in the new normal? So the areas of control, prevention, and detection become extremely important for the would-be traveler to understand of where it is safe to go. Next, please. Click two more times, please. And one more time, please. Okay, so this is the FinTech 2021. This is from IFN. I find the one that's from Ellipsis and Dinar Standards to be a bit more robust, of 240 Islamic FinTech startups in the areas of 11 categories, including payments, Pay Halal, for example, out of Malaysia. The point here is Islamic finance, the largest vertical in the Islamic economy, has a number of Islamic FinTechs at the pre-seed and seed stage, and some outliers with well funding from VCs. But nonetheless, we see an ecosystem. The middle part of this particular slide talks about the carbon footprint of the global tourism industry. As I said, it's about 8%. And here's a pie chart, if you will, and the pie chart breaks down which is the biggest element within that area. And if we were to focus on lodging and focus in on areas where startups can have a contribution. Halal food, most Muslim countries are net importer, so food mileage and carbon footprint. So you've got agritech and vertical farming and hydroponic farmings. Will hospitality industry start working with agritechs to reduce the food mileage? A lot of hotels are powered by fossil fuel. Renewable energy reduces the power consumption and reduces the carbon emissions. So will more of the hotels start putting solar panels? Water management, they have beautiful gardens. Obviously, it has to be watered because in many of these places of the tropical region, which Malaysia is one of them, water becomes an issue. Laundry is a big area with respect to the emissions, water usage, detergent, etc. So you've got startups in this particular space. Packaging. My point here is you've got Islamic fintechs addressing the pain points in the Islamic finance space. We've got the Muslim lifestyle tourism industry. It has contribution to the carbon emissions, greenhouse gases. And therefore, as part of responsible tourism, there has to be something done to reduce the emissions, especially at the lodging. Next, please. So if you can just click, just keep going and until the end of this thing. So here, one more time, that's great. So here, this is the Muslim travel marketplace. As we move forward into the new normal, sustainability is embedded in the Quran when it talks about mizan, balance, khalifa, or amanat, stewards, and maslaha. This is important for us to be stewards towards the people, planet, and prosperity. So when you're looking at destinations, will destinations start talking about these areas? When you look at destination, in the middle bottom is the various options that a traveler has for consideration. And then when they look at that particular set of destinations, they may look at these criteria. Again, this is from CrescentRatings about where to go. And the last part of this is the need to have, the good to have, and the nice to have. My point here is, in the new normal, will things change or are they going to remain the same? So at this point in time, let me stop. I hope that I set the table for my colleagues on this. So if you can please, let me get the gallery view. And Brother Fazal, I've said a lot. I've basically set the table. Let's start with the question everyone has on their mind. When are we going to return to the normal?
If I had that question all sorted out, I won't be sitting here.
Sure.
So I think, so I think what we have done, I think we released a report in July last year, which was called the Travel Readiness Report, where we came up with some scenarios for ASEAN in terms of travel recovery, and basically this is probably replicable for other regions as well. So we came up with a positive, plausible, and a pessimistic scenario, and that was in August last year. Of course, the positive scenario did not happen. The plausible scenario was that we will recover up to about 70% by the middle of 2022, and the pessimistic scenario was that we will only recover up to about 30% of 2019 levels even by the end of 2022. What we did this year when we released the Global Muslim Travel Index 2021 a month ago, we re-looked at these scenarios and we updated these scenarios. As we all know, none of us expected this to drag on, the COVID to drag on this long. We still don't have a clear view of when we are going to get out. But currently, so sort of coming back, so we re-looked at these scenarios, replotted them for ASEAN, and our current predictions are that we'll get to about 80% of 2019 levels by sometime in 2023. So I think if you look at many other prediction models, there are plenty of prediction models out there by UNWTO and others, WTTC maybe as well. Most of the predictions are that we'll get to some level of let's say return to 29. Our why do I say 29? I mean, our reference point is 2019. That's our reference point. So so some level of 2019 levels by either middle or latter half of 2023. So that's the general prediction out there. But having said that, I don't think anyone has a foolproof projection of how it is going to come out. Because we are running out of now lambda, beta, and delta, and I don't know how many others. So the virus is not giving up. We need to polish our maths to know all that as well. So I think, but more optimistically, I think all indications are, I mean, the key, of course, is vaccination. The level of vaccination is key, and which comes back to the model that we developed, as you mentioned, prevention, detection, and control model. Prevention is key. And I think as most countries, at least more developed countries, are probably between 80 to 100% vaccinated by the end of this year. So I think 2023 looks a realistic year to really look at getting back to 2019 levels. However, I think I'll leave it with that. However, the biggest unknown here, even if if you're having that kind of a projection, is how will the consumer behavior change? Will it change? How will it change? How does the industry look at that? I mean, that's probably the biggest unknown yet. I'll leave it with that for the time being.
Fantastic. Thank you. My follow-up question for you to think about is, what must the industry do now before middle of 2022 or end of 2022? Something has to be done. We can't be sitting back and watching the cases go up, cases go down, and new vaccination. So if you can think about that, and I'll come back to you. Brother Faeez, welcome. It's good to see you here. Question for you, and I'm not going to give you easy questions because you are one of the two people that who say stuff in this space and it matters. So we talked about this travel readiness indicator. And that obviously is going to be on the minds of the would-be tourists. Question to you is, for places like Malaysia, is within country tourism the way to go, or are we going to basically still focus in on whatever country has basically inched up very high on the travel indicator, and it is a Muslim travel destination, therefore people are going to go towards there? So within a country or outbound?
Thank you so much for MDEC for the invitation. I think the question would be now if I look back at the growth of tourism, I mean it's been growing before 2019. Then the whole world is hit by the pandemic, and then you see 80% of travel completely wipe off. Now, whether or not we start off with domestic, I think that's what the government of Malaysia is currently focusing on. So you do it in phases: step 1, domestic; step 2, international. But I think it all comes down to a proper roadmap and whether or not the country itself is ready to open the border. Because if you have everything set up, let's say everyone is vaccinated, the cases are low, but if the country are not ready to open up the border due to fear or for whatever reason, then you can't have tourism bouncing back. Now you see, let's say if you split Malaysia into states and region, you see places like the Klang Valley, which is Selangor and KL, which comprises of, let's say, 30% or 40% of the population. Now, in this area, almost 80%, close to 80% of adults has already been vaccinated. But at the same time, the government are not ready. I mean, is not ready to basically open up the border. So as a result, you cannot encourage tourism. But I do think that once the border or once the government is ready to actually open up both domestic, local borders and international, I do expect for us to see a spike in tourism. Now, and why do I say this is because you can refer to countries like the US, for example. Now, usually in travel, you measure the growth based on the RPK, the revenue per kilometer, which measure the number of distance that people travel. Now, if I look at the US, for example, in the month of towards May to July, where a lot of domestic tourism did happen, we did see a 300% spike in terms of travel, the people traveling, as compared to last year. Now, although this is 30% lesser, I do expect that by the end of the year, domestic tourism in the US, at least, would actually recover to pre-pandemic time. So we do see that once everything is back in order, once everything is status quo, meaning that the restriction is back to pre-COVID time, I do expect that travel, it will rebound faster than we expect. Now, one is the US. My other sample case is actually in 2003, when we had the SARS cases. Now, people forgot this specific event already because it's been 10 years. Now, we've had this whole pandemic, not in the same scale, but on a smaller scale. So the Malaysian government prevented or actually closed the border for Chinese tourists and Hong Kong and Taiwan tourists coming into Malaysia. And the whole pandemic fear was there. So we did see a 30% drop in outbound tourism back in 2003. But how long did it take for it to actually recover? It's less than a year. So following the same trend and following the trend of, let's say, domestically last year, which happened in Malaysia when the government briefly opened up the domestic border, I do expect that travel will recover much faster than we hope for. IATA released numbers for the number of travel for July. And we can see that the international tourism or international outbound travel increased by 80% as compared to last year. So it's a huge growth, much faster than we anticipate. And I think once everything is back and once the government is ready to actually open up the border, we will see travel resume. Why I think it will start off with domestic is because, you see, international travel relies on two things. One, whether or not locally or your own country opens up the border for you to actually go out. And secondly, whether or not the other destination accept or allow tourism to happen. We see countries like Australia or New Zealand, which decides to close the border for the entire whole 2022, which is a problem. But then we do see Europeans or Europe open up the border for specific countries with or without vaccination. So domestically, I think it's what's going to happen first. But on the second step, internationally, where people would go would depend on which country they are allowed to go. If let's say I'm from Malaysia, I'm allowed to go to, let's say I'm allowed to go to Korea, but I'm not allowed to go to, let's say, Australia, then the travel pattern would change. We would change from going a lot of Malaysian going to Korea instead of actually going to Australia.
All right, fantastic. Thank you. Deep and insightful, very much appreciated. What I would like you to think about is the following, after Brother Fazal answers the question that I posed him, is domestic tourism is obviously local ringgits. It's the international, the dollars, that basically bring employment and have that multiplier effect. So you've got to really boost domestic tourism to actually have an impact that is coming from international dollars. How and what can be done in light of this challenge? So just think about that. Brother Fazal, so what are the hotels need to do? Yes, the halal, the halal meals and all this other stuff has to be done. But one of the key issues has to be in the area of housekeeping, right? That the rooms are thoroughly clean, sanitized according to standards and guidelines. This way, the guest has comfort. So that's one thing. You're talking about concierge, you're talking about housekeeping, you're talking about the whole ecosystem of people who touch a room. What are you hearing about that area?
Yeah, I think the hotels which are opening up are doing a lot of confidence building when it comes to health and safety. I mean, that's given. I mean, everybody has to do that. You know, of course, there are also naysayers saying, you know, that level of cleanliness. I mean, I have seen articles on that as well. You know, why do that level of deep cleaning of a room? However, providing the level of confidence that the travelers are looking for is crucial, at least in the beginning phase. So I think most hotels are coming up with SOPs in terms of health, safety, and there are a lot of technologies being robots and all these kind of technologies are being coming into play now. There are many startups, companies who are looking at that. So I think, yeah, from a health and safety point of view, that's what most of these, not just hotels, I mean, even airports and all these guys are doing, because that's the biggest concern of the travelers. Having said that, how much of that will stay beyond COVID and how much will just fizzle away is something that we need to keep a watch on. I mean, like the same kind of a phenomenon as we saw security becoming so important after 9/11 in terms of airport security and all that. We went through a whole new experience of going through security, and certain things have stayed, and we don't even notice them anymore, right? We just pass by those screening things. We just don't realize, I think. So some of those aspects of health and cleanliness, we might not even realize, and it just happens. The systems are in place, the tech is in place to do that. Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. So you're basically saying that hospitality industry has to focus in on what matters to the tourists and the tourist dollars, and safety is a priority number one. And the hospitality industry will start probably working with startups in this particular space, clean tech, for lack of a better phrase. And so that spurs startups who basically collaborate and have joint ventures with the hospitality industry. And that makes the guest feel comfortable. So what you've done is actually have had a multiplier effect of encouraging startups. So Absolutely. That's one of the silver linings. Thank you. Okay, Brother Faeez, the question I posed to you, let me add to that question by one of our viewers who sent in this. When do you think domestic tourists will feel it's safe to travel to island resorts in Malaysia? So this sort of ties into domestic tourism. My issue is domestic tourism is ringgit-based. International tourism is dollar-based, and that basically has a huge impact on the tourism industry. How much do we have to gear up the domestic tourism to offset the loss of international tourism?
I think if I were to look back in the numbers for 2019, it is almost 50-50. So about 80 to 90 billion ringgit was spent domestically, and at the same time was about 100 billion was spent by incoming tourists into Malaysia, if I take Malaysia as sample case. So it's about 50-50 in terms of spending. But if I were to look at the number of rooms in the hotels occupied, a lot of it is actually geared up or occupied by foreign tourists. So as much as we like to see domestic growing, I don't foresee that it would be it would just be a short-term solution to the whole tourism pandemic problem. We can start off with tourism, with domestic, but I do think that it has to immediately or within a short period of time focus on international tourists, because in the end, you can't rely on the same money circulating. If I were to look at the number of, let's say back in 2019, a typical Singaporean spent about $700 in Indonesia when it comes to when they travel there. So if you cut off the border, this specific amount is just gone, disappeared. With regards to the question whether or not we do have, confidence to travel, I think at this period of time when the border is closed, yes, you were thinking whether or not it's safe or not. But the moment you open up, and we've seen sample cases of this, whether it be in Malaysia itself, when the government opened last year, so the government opened for a period of, I think, 3 months or 6 months in July last year. And within a week, people started to travel and the hotels room were full. So in terms of confidence itself, the moment that the government allows people to travel, whether domestically or internationally, people will start to travel. And even right now, I see a lot of demand for Umrah, people who wants to go to Saudi Arabia to perform the Umrah. The demand has already increased. It's just that you can't actually go there. And during this period as well, we see a lot of people during the Hajj season, before Malaysia decided not to allow, or at least the government of Saudi Arabia basically announced they only do local Hajj, there were a lot of people who actually registered wanting to go to Hajj. So these are all indicators which shows that the confidence is there the moment that travel itself is allowed. So the moment that you allow travel, be it domestically or internationally, people will start to travel. It's just human nature. We've been moving around, we've been traveling ever since the early days.
Right. All right, thank you. No, excellent point in terms of trying that balance and then how to address the loss of dollar tourism. Brother Fazal, what is at stake here is a lot of money, obviously, based upon the numbers from the size of the Muslim lifestyle marketplace. But let me ask you a specific question with respect to business travel. I know Crescent Ratings has done, I think, a business travel index, from what I recall. Do you think that the business travel market within, say, Malaysia, Indonesia, etc., that is going to potentially lead and the personal tourism market will follow that?
How I see now, I may be absolutely wrong. I think it was the leisure market which will lead first, simply because the business has now embraced a lot of things in terms of connectivity, in terms of meetings, virtual meetings, that we probably before that didn't really dip our toes into too much, So now I think we have a better understanding of using these tools, and they are becoming more and more sophisticated. We used Zoom like 2 years before the pandemic. I mean, when nobody was using Zoom actually, and that Zoom platform and now has improved hugely in order to enable business transactions. I mean, business discussions and all that. So I think. When it comes to, I mean, there's a cost element as well. Companies, at least in the beginning, will be a little bit more careful in managing their costs. So I think overall, I feel that the leisure market has a higher potential to lead the recovery than the business sector. That's currently my take on it. I may be wrong, as I said, but running a business ourselves, we know that we are doing many things that we thought, before that we thought, look, it has to be in person, event or in person meeting and things like that, which we now are comfortable doing online. Of course, we still need in person, events, networking and all that, but will it go back to the same level as we used to have before? I'm not sure.
Okay. No, that's a good point. That's a good analysis. Brother Faeez, same question to you. Malaysia is trying to get its economy going. And obviously, business is a major aspect of that. And in the emerging markets, which Malaysia is one, face-to-face relationships, physical, are important in doing business. So my question to you is, should we, or the government, be focusing in on the business travel market, because they're going to be more careful, there's business matching, and so there's more focused. The business traveler is not going to be going here, there, and there, where he may catch COVID, or if he's a carrier, dormant carriers, he may give COVID. Your thoughts?
I do, again, you see, business travel has not, I mean, it did dip into 2020, but it depends on the sector that you're looking at. So specific sector did not dip or dropped as much as other sector. And I do think, and I think that's what the government is currently focusing on as well, to actually put a lot of focus on MICE, the MICE and business event, and particularly for the exact same reason which you mentioned. It's a controlled, sort of like a controlled event or environment which you can create. You can control where the people are coming from, where they go, to what they visit, and then they would then leave immediately upon finishing their business. So in 2020, towards the end of the year, the government did introduce specific leeway for business people or people coming to Malaysia to conduct business to actually come to Malaysia. There's a specific, that's under the Trade Ministry. So you can actually apply to come in, and this is not open for leisure. So you can't come to Malaysia for leisure, but you can, however, apply to come to Malaysia to do businesses, and you can then have a specific concierge person which would then follow you, which would control basically where the spread of the virus. So I think that was a very good initiative by the government, because the government do realize that business is very important for the country, because it does bring in investment into the country, and it does bring in the tax into the country, and then it does encourage the building of jobs. So that is why the border is closed. But for business people, they can come into Malaysia, and they can also apply for a leeway for the quarantine to be reduced or waived.
Okay, that's a good point. That's a good point. Hopefully, we'll be following that with respect to the business travel market, and we'll know by way of announcements. Obviously, that's one proxy of seeing the business community doing what they're supposed to be doing. I want to now turn the channel towards technology and sustainability. You know, whether you're talking about Islamic finance or halal food, rarely do we talk about sustainability. And right now, many of the countries who have prepared budgets in the post-COVID have allocated money towards the green economy, green jobs, upskilling, reskilling. In the US, the coal industry, obviously, the dyeing industry, those are older workers. Reskilling them is difficult, but nonetheless, options are available at the federal level, at the state level. My question to both of you gentlemen, Brother Fazal, starting with you. Destinations that are halal friendly, Muslim friendly, are they thinking about sustainability? And if they are thinking about sustainability, what areas of sustainability are they thinking about to be a more responsible destination?
I think just to go back a little bit, I think the consumer demand or consumer awareness for, we may call it, community consciousness or, whatever, environment consciousness, all this was an area that was increasing awareness before COVID started. We have done a number of, in a number of reports that we have released in 2018, 2019, we had already identified that, these are some of the concerns that especially younger Muslims were concerned about. And they were eager, and overall the environment was about how the challenges that we had in 2019 was over tourism, all that kind of stuff. It was so I think COVID has probably given an opportunity for destinations to really focus on these issues now, because mass tourism won't be there for some time, whatever scenario that we are looking at. So this gives an opportunity for destinations to really focus on these things, because these are a golden opportunity, to look at them. And if you look at, to answer to your question, I think most destinations and, most facilities as well, we have discussed with the number of hotels as well, they are really focusing on environmental issues, how to reduce, carbon footprint. How can we contribute to reducing of the carbon footprint? waste management. Hotels are looking at that. At a destination level, I think there's similar programs in place. I think the biggest concern I have is how does the destination or there are two things, right? There are a few things that the destination themselves are doing, so it's not very visible to the travelers who are coming. Hotels themselves are doing it. It's not visible for the guests who are coming in. But the thing that which I think needs to be tackled is that how do you make it easy for the traveler or the guest to contribute to this? Because it's, they don't understand sophisticated words like carbon footprint and how are you contributing to that and or not contributing to that. So how do you sort of make it easier for them to say, look, if you do this, you are contributing to certain things, you're contributing to the betterment of the environment, or you're giving back to the community in the place that you're traveling to, you're sustaining the environment there. I think that's not very obvious to a traveler. Even if the traveler wants to contribute, it's not easy for them to sort of, it's not very simple to sort of, get on board and contribute. I think that's, even if destinations are beginning to do that, I think that's an area that destinations and facilities should look at. How do you make it simpler, understandable for the consumer to contribute? And I keep saying this, and we kept saying that before as well. All travelers, most travelers are now beginning to understand the enormity of the destruction of our environment. Right. Today we see fires and floods and all over the place. I think in the Muslim traveler, they have really a huge opportunity because, protecting the environment, protecting and giving back to the community is part of the faith itself. It's not something that, it's good to do, it's part of the faith itself. So the destinations have an opportunity to tap into this faith obligation of Muslim travelers. How can you sort of tap into that and make them part of this journey?
All right, thank you. Brother Faeez, you've got a good feel of the landscape for the tourism industry in Malaysia. From the tourism industry point of view and from the government point of view, from the Ministry of Environment point of view, is there interest in sustainable tourism or sustainable Islamic tourism? Or is this just something that is not of interest at this point in time because we just want to get any tourists?
I think the whole SDG and ESG has always been there. One of the policy in Malaysia. I remember being in one of the conferences back in 2018, and that specific conference is purely focused on sustainable tourism. So it was always there in Malaysia, and I think a lot of the policies are geared towards it as well. SDG is obviously one of the 17. Halal tourism is one of the 17 SDG goals, and I think the government itself is focusing a lot on harmonizing between all aspects of be it the economy, the environment, the local people, to have a more sustainable tourism. So not just on the environment side, but also beyond that. So you want to have a tourism industry which at the same time does not pollute or dump the waste into let's say the river, but at the same time you wouldn't want a tourism industry whereby the local people are not actually benefiting from that. So they're not making, let's say, enough money, or they're not having, jobs are not created for them. So I think all of that has been a focus of the government, and the policy which they create represents what they're thinking. So a lot of the policies are actually geared towards SDG or ESG, how they call it, and you can see itself manifested in the share prices as well. So companies or tourism company which are actually environmental, social, and which has a good governance when it comes to policies that governs environmental, social, and corporate governance in the company itself, has a much higher share price compared to like those which are not. So it does reflect both A, in terms of the policy which the government does or create, and B, in the share prices, which shows that people are showing a lot of interest in it, not just the government, because a lot of the policies is just one-sided. So you need to have both the government, the people, all stakeholders accepting the policy or actually embracing the policy. Also, in this case, you can see that. So you have the policies which are there, and then you have the share prices, which is much higher when you are an ESG company, which shows that the people are actually concerned on what we do or what the government does or what the company does. So if the company is actually dumping waste, it's not good for the environment, but it's also not good for you to put money into this specific company.
Right. That's a good point. There was a Harvard, I think, Business Review, a law review article recently on purpose and sustainability, and it's aligned to what you're saying. If you're making profits at the expense of the planet, you're really not very sustainable. But you can basically have profits and prosperity and still be considerate of the planet. So thank you. All right, as we are about 12 minutes left, one more question and then we'll go into summation. In the new normal, is tourism, halal tourism, Muslim lifestyle tourism going to be more expensive? Is this a price-sensitive market? That's the first thing. And if it's a price-sensitive market, assuming in the new normal, it'll be a little bit more expensive because of COVID cleaning fees, because of X, Y, and Z fees. Brother Fazal, your thoughts? Is it a price-sensitive market? And in the new normal, will Muslim lifestyle market be more expensive?
I think that question is not specific to the Muslim lifestyle market, right? I mean, it's a question, general question that you have. Is prices, how will the prices be reflected in the new normal? And I think there are many unknowns still, but I think there are some indications, at least in the short to medium. Of course, in the short term, we have, government subsidized offers to reduce your cost and all that, but is it the real cost? We are talking about the real cost here, not what, what is promoted in terms of, your promotions and all that. But if you look at the mathematics of it, the real cost should go higher, right? Because there are many other additions to do. The health and safety requirements require that you put in more work into what you do, and also there is a huge unknown still, and I think that's probably one of the key things is the airline prices, air ticket prices, because the airline industry has been when we are talking about international travel, right? We are air tickets, airline industry has been one of the worst hit industry in the travel sector, and if you look at the ASEAN scene, ASEAN leisure travel was mainly budget travel. You have many budget airlines in the region who were, I could fly from Singapore to KL for like $50-$60. I could go from Singapore to any part of Indonesia for probably about $100. Will that pricing be sustainable, at least in the medium? Will that cost structure be sustainable in the short to medium term is a huge question mark. So I think from a purely cost point of view, it has to go up. The cost has to go up. How you price it is a different ballgame altogether, right? From a cost structure point of view, all indications are medium to short to medium term. It has to go up.
Okay, that's a good point. Brother Faeez, a derivative of that question, which is the following. So if the costs are going to go up, we assume because of these components, then the budget traveler, instead of going to Indonesia or the Philippines or Korea, may stay within Malaysia. So domestic tourism would rise. Is that an assumption that may play out in the new normal?
I wouldn't say so. Number one, whether the price goes up, I mean, we wouldn't know. But if I look at let's say the ticket price right now, if I were to go to London, right, it's actually really cheap, particularly because A, lesser demand, but B, there's a lot of competition. So I do expect once the border opens up, let's say, and you're allowed to travel, due to the competition, like the airlines have a lot of competition. Now Turkish airline or Malaysian airline, they're all competing for the same amount of tourists. So as a result, they'd be lowering down the price. So whether or not it would increase is hard to say. But with regards to your question, whether they would then focus on domestic, I wouldn't say so, because if I were to look at the prices pre-COVID time, in 2019, it would be cheaper for me to conduct, let's say, a company event in Bali or in Phuket, compared to me having the same event in Langkawi. It's quite expensive to have it domestically. Yet still people do travel domestically, and vice versa. So people still do event in London, for example, pre-COVID time. So whether they would then focus a lot more on domestic, it's hard to say per se, because we wouldn't know whether the trend would change. But whether they will go out, I think it will still happen, particularly because as humans, we want to see something new. We want to see something which we don't get to see every single day. And we want to see things which we see on TV right in front of our eyes and enjoy ourselves.
Right. Okay. That's an interesting and a good analysis. And let's see what scenarios happen and how governments and stakeholders within the space react and iterate. So we are in the last, 5 minutes or so. So what I'd like to do now is sum up, but I want to put guardrails on the summing up. Question, Brother Fazal, to you is this. You've been doing the GIMT index for a number of years for both OIC and the non-OIC in terms of the top travel destinations, etc. In the post-COVID norm, are the rankings going to stay the same, or do you think there's going to be changes? I know it's asking you to predict, but I'm asking you based upon your experience, do you see the Indonesia moving up, or the Malaysia moving down, and Brunei moving up, and London going down, and France going up? Your thoughts?
I think what the COVID has done is to reset a lot of things, right? So a lot of destinations are starting almost from a similar position. Of course, certain destinations still have an advantage because of the massive level of capacity building that they have done before. But I think the COVID has given everybody some level of, I mean, I won't call it equal chances of, redefining the tourism, but they have a better chance now to catch up with other, whether it's in Islamic tourism, whether it's any type of tourism, no matter. But so you really have an opportunity to any destination now, if they put their thoughts together, plan well, they could grow in the niche that they want to focus on, because this is, it has reset the stage for many destinations. So I believe that will happen definitely in the Muslim travel space as well. Some destinations who have continued to put some, capacity building and all that during the last couple of years, during the pandemic as well. So I think it will reset, some of those destinations, and some of these destinations getting out of COVID will fare much better than those who were probably, faring better before, because everybody now has a equal shot at it. Not, equal is a strong word, I think, somewhat equal shot at it.
Right, and that's a good point. So almost a level playing field,
Yeah.
And the new normal, whoever puts in the most investment will capture more of the dollars based upon trust and confidence, basically. Okay, so Brother Faeez, a derivative of that question is this. Will we see new destinations that are not commonly seen in ranking indexes, whether it's a Muslim country or a non-Muslim country, because it's a new norm and they're all vying for the billions of dollars, a piece of that. So Africa, for example, a country in Africa will say, yes, we want to tap this because it's a new place. It's a new culture, new exposure, and we are COVID ready. So the new destinations will be, say, from Africa or South America, or is it going to be the same in the new normal?
I think I would echo what Brother Fazal was saying. Everyone now has an equal, sort of like an equal chance, whether or not you'll actually put in a lot more dollar, both in terms of marketing and infrastructure investment, to actually attract the tourist, and whether or not the policy itself remains the same towards tourists, whether you require now a visa, or whether or not you actually, there's another layer of actually verifying which region are you from, whether it's COVID dangerous or not. So all of this are ingredients or things that government can think of or put into consideration when actually crafting the new so-called tourism policy, and
right.
to basically whether or not they want to attract a lot more tourists, or they just want to remain, let's say, closed and focus on domestic. So
right.
depending on how the government actually creates this policy, would then enable people to then actually make a decision of where they would go. Because in the end, let's say pre-pandemic time, maybe let's say Australia is a top destination. But because the policy itself prevents the people from actually going to Australia, hence it can no longer be, let's say, a top destination. Then people might then shift towards destination or where the country itself are more welcoming. Let's say Europe, you don't need quarantine for 14 days in a hotel if I were to go to Europe at today, for example. So as a result, more people, whether it be Muslim or non-Muslim, would prefer to go to Europe as compared to, let's say, Hong Kong, which just now imposed 14 days pre and 14 days there, plus another 7 days if you are from specific country. So it's 21 days quarantine. So it becomes not desirable for me to go to Hong Kong. So all of this depends on the policy, I'd say, of the government.
Fantastic. Okay, we've come to the end of this very enlightening conversation. I've learned a lot based upon your theories and analysis, and the theories are backed by good validated facts. So both Brother Fazal, Brother Faeez, thank you very much for your time and your insights. I appreciate it. I'm sure our audience appreciated it. Back to you, our master ceremony. So thank you both.
Thank you, Rushdi, and our fellow panel members for that great discussion on tourism and the Muslim lifestyle market to kickstart our morning. You heard it right here. Realistically, you can expect 2023 to have tourism back to 2019 levels. Well, the earlier, the better. We will now be moving forward to our next session of the day. It will begin very shortly, so do click join session and also complete the survey for each of the sessions for us to continually serve you better. See you in a bit.
Thank you.